Welcome, everyone, to Washington Legal Foundation's webinar. My name is Glenn Lammy. I am Executive Director and Vice President of Legal Studies for the Foundation. For those of you not familiar with Washington Legal Foundation, we are in our 47th year, our free enterprise advocacy education. We do it in the form of litigation in the courts through the filing of amicus briefs and regulatory comments and other activities. We also have a legal studies division, which I head up, which is our publishing and program side, kind of a think tank. And we engage in just about any legal and policy issue that affects the free enterprise system. This program is the second in a Tech in the Court series. WLF is presenting in partnership with TechFreedom. TechFreedom is a nonprofit, nonpartisan technology think tank launched in 2011. The organization seeks to advance public policy that makes experimentation, entrepreneurship, and investment possible, and thus unleashes the ultimate human resource, human ingenuity. Today, we treat you to a deep dive into the longest running legal action in the federal government's own Tech in the Court series, the Federal Trade Commission's lawsuit against Facebook, initially back in 2020, and now Meta. I'm pleased to hand over the moderation reins today to an attorney I greatly admire and personally and professionally admire, Corbin Barthold, who's the Internet Policy Counsel and Director of Appellate Litigation at TechFreedom. He writes on tech, legal, regulatory, and social issues for a wide range of outlets, including the City Journal, The Bulwark, Reason, Lawfare, TechDirt, and the Daily Beast. Corbin also hosts the Tech Policy Podcast and previously served as Senior Litigation Counsel here at Washington Legal Foundation. Please be aware that we are recording this discussion if you have any questions. And Corbin, I'm pleased to hand the floor over to you.
Hello, I'm Corbin Barthold. Thanks to Washington Legal Foundation for hosting this second installment of the WLF TechFreedom Tech in the Courts series. Today's talk is doubling as an episode of the Tech Policy Podcast. So for those of you listening there, welcome back to the show. I'm pleased to be joined once again by Geoff Manne, President and founder of the International Center for Law and Economics. On the podcast, Geoff and I have been running something of a big tech antitrust in the courts series. We've done United States versus Google. We've done FTC versus Amazon. We've done Epic versus Apple. And we'll soon get to United States versus Apple. Geoff and I have questioned and critiqued these lawsuits, and I think all of our discussions are worth checking out. But this one today is special. Today, we'll be tackling the longest, the weakest, the most wasteful, the most misguided lawsuit of them all, FTC versus Facebook. FTC versus Facebook is, at any rate, what the lawsuit was called back when it was filed 1,366 days ago. That was late 2020. Now it's FTC versus Meta. The district judge initially granted a motion to dismiss the suit. The FTC then crawled its way past the motion to dismiss stage in 2022 by pleading a contrived fantasy world social media market in which the likes of YouTube, TikTok, and ex-Twitter don't exist. The case then embarked on years of discovery. Tens of millions of pages of documents have been produced. Many hundreds of hours of depositions have occurred. If we're applying existing antitrust law, all that effort served no purpose, aside from topping up the lawyers' bank accounts. Under existing antitrust law, this is a dead lawsuit walking. But the FTC has some novel, dare I say, neo-Brandeisian antitrust theories up its sleeve. So things could go off the rails. The summary judgment briefing is complete, and we await a ruling. Geoff, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Corbin. Great to be here with you, as always.
So as I already previewed, think every piece of this lawsuit is wrong. I think the FTC's market definition is terrible. I think they have no evidence of monopoly power. I think they have no evidence of exclusionary conduct by Facebook.
But tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll touch on all of those. But let's start with the market definition. I was thinking last night about what's sort of the core flaw from which all of the rest of the errors flow here. And I think it's something like The FTC has this assumption about the ontology of Facebook and Instagram and of the wider market that Facebook must be a friends and family social media app. Yeah. And there must be this friends and family social media market that exists for Facebook to dominate. And you even see this at the outset of their brief, where they review the history of such apps, starting, with Friendster and MySpace. And this is somehow an argument in their minds of, aha, this is a market and it will continue to exist going forward. And it is the classic, always one step behind antitrust enforcement mentality, and it infects the entire lawsuit. That's my theory. Go. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is whatever is unique about Facebook, and I think we could probably agree that there are attributes of Facebook that distinguish it from some of the other platforms that you and I would say are competitors to Facebook, and that the FTC has said are not competitors to Facebook. But whatever's unique about it probably doesn't have the salience that it once did. This idea, and what the FTC identifies as the uniqueness of Facebook, is this friends and family sharing function. And I think what you're saying, and I think I agree with you, is that however important that once was, it's at the very least in significant decline with respect to Facebook, and may even be, and I think actually, according to evidence that Meta shares in its briefing, is not even remotely the most prominent use of Facebook today. And so I do think there's this a bit of a dichotomy. I agree with you in everything you said, except I want to stress that I do think there is something a little bit different about Facebook. The relevant question for the antitrust case is, does that matter? I mean, is that significant enough to support the FTC's definition of a market that includes only Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and MeWe? And if you're like me, you've never even seen MeWe. I don't even,
That bears repeating. The FTC's market is Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and MeWe. And forgive me if anyone from MeWe is watching this. I had never heard of MeWe until this lawsuit.
You really feel like that was stuck in as we can't, no one's going to believe it's just these three. Let's find another one to add in, right? And fine. Yeah, I don't know, but I do think so. So what do you think? Is there Snapchat's got to be the most, obviously more familiar than MeWe, compared to say TikTok or Twitter, let's say. Does Snapchat seem to you like it encompasses some sort of functionality, something that separates it from TikTok and Twitter, but appropriately groups it with Instagram and Facebook?
Well, we have the problem that you and I have discussed, I believe, when we did the Amazon case, that it's hard to separate our own anecdotal subjective experiences, because we're not talking about the market in iron ore. We have firsthand experience here. Right, and in 2004 to 2010, shall we say, I've done the math before, and I was like one of the 0.0005% first joiners of Facebook. That's not a brag, it's just coincidence. There was this period where all my high school friends, all my college friends, everybody was there. You could make the case that there was this network effect. And I think the FTC lives in this world where there must be a product like that. And that just doesn't exist anymore. Facebook, as far as my friends and family network graph is concerned, is now a wasteland. There are more advertisements with AI pictures that boomers think are real than posts of kids of my friends at this point, I think. We can come back to that as a quality argument.
Yeah.
I don't think this market, I'm not even sure it exists anymore. We may be heading into a time where that eyeball attention is going to passive consumption of content like TikTok and the cozy web, signal groups. As many Gen Z people use Discord as use Facebook, at least based on the data that I found. And so you have this question of, is there this rump friends and family market that still matters, that people still care about? And it's not impossible. It could be. I think the FTC is making a terrible mistake if they really want to go after that in trying to claim that basically all time, other than I think dating on Facebook, goes into this, as if when people are watching reels that connects to this friends and family network, I think they fundamentally get the causation wrong. And what I mean by that is, we have the studies where there's a Facebook outage, and what do people do with that time? And we find that TikTok and YouTube are even closer substitutes than Snapchat. And the FTC says, well, no, that's not evidence of anything. That's basically the price of the product going up to infinity. There are these people who have a friends and family network on Facebook, and they're just using that time to do something else while they wait for their friends and family network to go back online. Yeah. And as a matter of just theory, sitting next to a fireplace with no empirical evidence, that is logical, but it just is completely detached from the real world, where the causation, to repeat, is the other way around. Facebook is putting reels on Instagram because it's scared of TikTok. It's scared of this product that is passive consumption of content that is algorithmically presented to you. So it's plugging that in. And whatever friends and family rump is left, it's the discussion you and I have had before that, Dr. Pepper is a unique product. If the exact flavor of Dr. Pepper, is a certain thing that people must have, maybe there's a rump of people who have this friends and family thing on Facebook that is still their core use.
But as an antitrust matter, that's really important, because antitrust markets aren't defined by superficial product similarities. Antitrust markets are defined by the extent to which users substitute one product for another, and if they sufficiently substitute from one product to the other, if the price of the first one goes up enough, they say, well, I don't want this one, it's too expensive, but I'll use this instead, then that other product is deemed to be in the market. And so as a technical matter, and we can talk about this, and there's a lot of the briefing about this, that's a really hard thing to show in a world where users aren't paying for the service that they're getting. And it's really hard to have any observation of examples where the price has gone up such that people have said, well, I don't want to use this product at this price, I'm going to switch to something else, because the price stays at zero. And we can talk about how the parties have gone about trying to show that. But I think for right now, the important thing to note is that there's always a core group who essentially won't switch at any price, like the diehard Dr. Pepper lover, who, even if the price of Dr. Pepper doubled, they're not going to switch to Pepsi. Or, as I'm sure I've said before, like me, if you're a Coke lover, Pepsi is not really a viable substitute because it's garbage water. But others feel differently. And the question becomes, for those core users, are they valuable enough to, let's switch back to Facebook instead of Coke, right? Are they valuable enough to Facebook that even if all of the marginal users switch away, Facebook can extract enough value from those core users that they could be deemed to be exercising monopoly power? Now, again, that's really hard to assess in this kind of market, because we have to look at how Facebook derives value from its users. Again, something else we should talk about, because there is always, in these digital platform markets, the two-sided market aspect, where one side is advertising and one side is the users that we're talking about, and that greatly complicates things. But to sort of roll it back to the point we've been talking about, the only evidence we have suggests that indeed, when Facebook becomes unavailable, users switch to other services that the FTC does not deem are in its market. And what we don't know is whether they're doing that because they all of a sudden have time on their hands that they would use for this function that Facebook offers, but no one else does, and so they might as well do something else, or whether in fact they view these things as substitutes. But to your point, what we do know, at least from anecdotal evidence and certainly from survey evidence, is that a great number of people use Facebook exactly for the functionality that they get from these other services. We could create an example here that we can use throughout this discussion. I think the easiest one is watching short form videos. people look at Facebook and watch short form videos, whether they share them with their family or friends or not. And people look at Instagram and do the same, but obviously people do the same on Snapchat, TikTok, and Twitter as well. And all of them, and I'll turn it back over to you here, have talked for a while, but all of them essentially offer offer up these videos based on an algorithm. And the FTC is kind of trying to say somehow that the algorithm that Facebook uses, because it's influenced by your relationship with family and friends, is somehow uniquely different than the algorithm that Twitter or TikTok uses to serve up the exact same videos. And I got to say, I think that's absurd. I think today, no one really cares or knows what on what basis the algorithm is showing them these videos. They just know, well, for whatever reason, this service does a pretty good job showing me the videos I want to see, or this service does a good job doing it. And in fact, for most people, they're using all of them. Again, I don't want to generalize too much from my own experience, but I find cat videos, or the equivalent of cat videos, on all of these services. And I can't say that one of them is somehow different than the other because of the family and friends aspect. Now, I guess the one thing that
I should admit, yeah, my own personal experience, I have to be upfront about it, is just extreme substitutability.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, not only that, so what I think is interesting and maybe lacking in the FTC's case is, and it must be because they didn't have evidence of this. One thing that I could see that would be different, potentially different, and might serve to distinguish is on the, so we're sort of talking about the supply side. On the supply side, any algorithm is as good as any other algorithm, whether it's influenced by family and friends or not. I think that's a non-starter for the FTC. But what if people like to share the videos on Facebook with their family and friends in a way that they can't on Twitter or TikTok because they don't have the same social graph, because their family and friends aren't there or something? So
Yeah, okay.
it's not just the viewing, it's then the sharing. Now, before you answer that, I want to say something. I don't think the FTC suggests this at all. I don't think there's any evidence. I don't think there's any discussion, unless I missed it, in the FTC's filings that say, hey, people really like to share these videos, and that's what makes it different. It's not watching the video, it's then sharing it. And so what I'm saying is, I do think that could be a distinguishing feature. I just think, to your point, people aren't really doing that much anymore, at least not enough that the FTC thinks they should mention it.
So at the motion to dismiss stage, Judge Boasberg said to the FTC, okay, you've got this personal social networking service market, and you've alleged dominance by Facebook in that. And Facebook says, hey, you FTC are wrapping in all of these things, passive video consumption. You're basically just counting all time on Facebook as PSNS time. And that's wrong. And Judge Boasberg goes, Facebook, interesting point, not relevant at a motion to dismiss. We need to go do discovery. And actually, this strangely connects to my gripe that I've brought to you in past episodes of, it annoys me when the government brings an antitrust lawsuit and they don't have a remedy in mind yet. I think that's sharp dealing by the government, which should have an extra amount of integrity beyond your average plaintiff's lawyer. Similar thing here. I have a gripe that the government was willing to, it knew it, or I should say, it should have known. I think it knew that it was going to pull this bait and switch, where to spend countless millions of dollars on lawyer time in this discovery, it was going to come out and say, oh, did we say PSNS and we're going to narrow it down later? Well, oops, all time on PSNS services is PSNS time, and we're not going to differentiate.
Right.
Now, I don't know why they did that. I'd love to hear if you have thoughts on this, of if they just couldn't. Had they actually made the effort to differentiate out the PSNS time, the friends and family time, the time that a person is on Facebook or Instagram,
sharing or interacting,
specifically for the sharing, that would be an interesting conversation to have. But the notion that Facebook added Reels to copy TikTok, but there's the sharing function that's special, that's just not living in the real world.
But isn't the reason for that pretty obvious? It's that they needed to show that Facebook had monopoly power, and if you include, if you Well, no, I guess that would cut the other way, right? If you actually limited yourself to the sort of
You
sharing
get
time,
this rump
you actually
market that
get
maybe
a
Facebook
larger
dominates.
market. But and then I think so I guess the answer to that is they would run up against exactly the sorts of arguments that they are in fact running up against anyway, which is that it's a gerrymandered market because people do spend so much time on Facebook and these other apps because Facebook has implemented features precisely to compete with other apps that by this theoretical market definition of actually just sharing functionality of just sharing uses isn't part of the market, they'd have a really hard time maintaining that. But so I'm going to argue against myself, which is, but they have that problem now anyway. So why didn't they? It's a good question. Why didn't they limit the market to the thing
You're
that actually
operating under the
distinguishes?
assumption that they have to press forward with the
Well,
lawsuit.
well, no, that's true, right? Yeah, of course. But I think it actually also gets to your remedy point, right? If you know, if that were the entirety of the market, what would be the appropriate remedy? We'll get to that when we talk more about whether buying Instagram was exclusionary or not. But they obviously want to break off Instagram from Facebook. And I wonder if then you would have a bit of a problem where having so narrowly sort of defined the market that you would end up
Network
with
effects can only
Instagram and
collect in so
Facebook.
many places.
Okay. So let's okay. Well, the point I was making was maybe then you would actually find that you'd have to argue that Instagram and Facebook themselves are in separate markets because while maybe they both encompass this sharing aspect, they are different, right? Instagram is just photos or at the time at which the merger happened, the time that seems to be in the FTC's head, they had sufficiently different functionality that the sharing alone can't be the thing that brings them in the same market. So wouldn't it be weird if your remedy was to require these things to separate in a world in which they weren't in fact competing in the same market once they were separated? Which goes to a lot
Yeah,
of things. Which goes to a lot of things. One of most important of which is it seems to me that the best one of the best arguments that Meta has here is that uh so this is a Section 2 case, right? This is a case where the FTC is saying Meta has monopolized this market. The way they monopolized it was by buying Instagram. And the argument is that reduces competition because Instagram and WhatsApp
or
were
they got
nascent
a monopoly
competitors.
and abused it
Well, yeah,
by
right. Yes,
purchasing
but
Instagram. To be precise, yeah.
maintained their monopoly by preventing these competitors from arising. To me, the most fundamental problem with that is that they didn't kill these companies, right? These weren't the killer acquisitions, right? They incorporated the functionalities of these companies into their product and dramatically expanded on their quality. And so in a very real sense, from a consumer perspective, the availability of whatever Instagram has to offer that's different from what Facebook has to offer is very much still available, and arguably better precisely because of the merger than it might have been if Instagram remained and WhatsApp remained separate companies. So the reason I'm mentioning that now, and then we can go on to another topic, is to say that, yeah, there are differences between them. And that's in fact part of the defense. Meta's defense in this case is we were improving our product. We were improving our product not in order to kill Instagram as a competitor. That wasn't the point. The point was to make us better as a competitor against TikTok. And well, TikTok didn't exist then, but Twitter and other companies that might arise. And that's a perfectly appropriate action. In fact, we want to encourage companies to do things to make their product better in order to increase their competition, even if by some superficial measure that means they're no longer competing with Instagram. I think it's hard to argue that Facebook's intention here wasn't to make itself better in order to compete against existing or future threats. And one way I'd say I know that is because if all they cared about was killing Instagram, why didn't they just kill Instagram and not incorporate it into its product?
Perfect. You're moving us into monopoly power.
Sure.
So last thought
Sorry
on
about
market
that.
definition, because it does connect. I mentioned networking effects and the FTC.
Yeah.
I love the way Facebook actually put this. They call them barrier buzzwords. Like if we just shout network effects enough, that'll, and that's, you don't see Facebook really trying to defend the network effect of the social graph of people's stuff on Facebook. If anything, that has just deteriorated. When I go on Facebook, it's, Ozymandias's stone proclaiming his greatness. I mean, everybody, it's just tumbleweed going through. I suppose this is not terribly complimentary to Facebook that, one of the reasons this lawsuit is so weak is that Facebook, I don't see as this dominant power in this PSNS market anymore. They are looking to spread to things like Instagram and WhatsApp, a messaging app. Oh my God, we need to talk about that non sequitur. Yeah. And Instagram, a photo app. And, what do people do on Instagram now? It's like 50% of the time is spent watching reels. Right. So what they ended up doing was buying this asset that they could later adjust to use to address the threat of TikTok, who, you can't repeat enough, is not in the FTC's market. Right. You look at the brown shoe factors, the only one worth mentioning before we move on. These are factors from which you can kind of reverse engineer the existence of a market. Well, do people in the industry think that market exists? Where are the emails in which Facebook is going, Snapchat and MeWe? Man, those are the things we need to look out for. No. That it's fake. It's gerrymandered for this lawsuit. It's a ticket for this ride only. Enough about market power. About market definition. Yeah. On to market power. So you can do this one of two ways, right? Indirect power, showing a dominant share of a well-defined market with barriers to entry. We've covered market. Arbitrary market. It's out. You're done. Yeah. Maybe we can also talk about barriers to entry, but we're already off. We've ticked that one off. Right. You can show direct power, the ability to raise prices or lower output or lower quality. I think we can both agree prices and output are immediately out. So I think the topics here are barriers to entry and then quality.
Why do you say output is immediately out? I mean, I can see why the FTC wants it to be immediately out, but from Facebook,
well, you need some kind of evidence of lowering output, and Facebook and Instagram have grown and grown and grown. Correct? I'm sorry. I understand why. Yeah, it doesn't work to support the FTC's case, but like price is a non-starter because it just doesn't exist in this market. You could, in theory, look for evidence of monopoly power using output. And my point is just that doesn't help the FTC at all. But maybe it is the right metric, and maybe it is exactly a reason why the FTC should never have brought this case. Because, well, of course, you never know exactly what the but-for world looks like. We certainly know that output in however you define this market has grown, enormously. And Precisely. That's not irrelevant. At least it hasn't gone down. So in that sense, I understand what you're saying. It doesn't work to support the FTC's case, but let's not rule it out as the appropriate measure and as an indication that the FTC was wrong to bring this case in the first place. Well, why don't I make one quick point about barrier to entry, and then let's talk some about quality, because I think that is an interesting subject. Yeah. WhatsApp. What is WhatsApp doing in this lawsuit? So the FTC says in 2014, you bought this messaging app with, I believe, basically no U.S. presence. It actually charged a fee when it was first founded. Its founders had no interest in becoming. Yeah, they had no interest in becoming a social network like Facebook, and yet the FTC says, you acquired a potential competitor, and that was anti-competitive. And so it leads to this WhatsApp catch-22, where the other side can say, well, if you think that WhatsApp was a serious potential competitor to Facebook in 2014, then every messaging app, Signal, iMessage, Reddit, Discord, LinkedIn, anything is a potential competitor today. And when you look at the FTC's response to that point in its brief, I don't want to be too harsh. I see a government lawyer sitting in his office thinking, I don't get paid enough to come up with a real response here. Can I make a paragraph that is just kind of respectable and go home? They say, oh, well, WhatsApp was a serious competitor in 2014, but the barriers to entry today are higher and nobody else counts. And you say, why? And they say,
Network effects.
stop asking questions. I just, the WhatsApp catch 22 was such a damning piece of evidence about barriers to entry where it's almost like I would go the other way and say WhatsApp was not a serious potential competitor then, but FTC, you have decided to make your case so much harder in your zeal to just attack this acquisition by any means necessary. You've actually blown up your own case.
Yeah, and let me just add quickly to that I think it's even worse than that, because by virtue of the fact that WhatsApp, is deemed to have been a potential competitor, it really seems impossible to suggest that TikTok, Twitter, and Google Plus, which probably existed at the time at some point during this during the period between when Instagram was purchased and today, Google Plus existed. All of those are even more likely to have been potential competitors. And the reason that's important is because the FTC has excluded them all from the relevant market, even though any of them could easily have become, is at least as likely to have become a competitor, even in the FTC's market definition, as WhatsApp, which had very few of the features that would have been analogous to what Facebook had.
Yeah, I actually like Facebook Messenger. I wish my social graph used it. I think it's kind of cool. I like it better than WhatsApp. But what is clear to me is that WhatsApp is not Facebook. It doesn't look like Facebook. It's not similar to Facebook. And it really is.
No,
if you look at iMessage and you go, man, this we could make this into a great social media product.
Well, in fact, how is iMessage not in the relevant market? If WhatsApp was a potential competitor, why is iMessage not, at the very least, a potential competitor, which is relevant to determining what the relevant market is?
Well, that's why I say, to reiterate, the FTC really shot itself in the foot. I actually think they could have made a stronger barriers to entry argument. I think it's still weak. You have to look at the rise of TikTok, and the fact that Gen Z today uses Discord, and the fact that Facebook itself has seen the need to pivot. But let me pivot. Use that as a pivot.
Sorry, before you do it, one quick other point on this that I think is interesting, which is because your mention of iMessage made me think of this. On that point about market definition and the potential uniqueness of sharing with friends and family in Facebook, I just want to point out that while this may not have been true when Facebook purchased Instagram, it's certainly true today that using your phone, you can accomplish much of the sharing that the FTC seems to suggest is unique to Facebook with just about any app, right? If I see a video on TikTok or on Twitter that I enjoy, I can use the share sheet in the iPhone and share it using some other app or using iMessage itself from within the iPhone. And I think that's important because it suggests a kind of blindness to the technological change that has occurred since the time that Facebook bought Instagram. But that in fact is relevant. It actually changes how unique the attributes of Facebook are relative to these other platforms, when even if the other platform doesn't have the same sharing ability, you can literally share with your Facebook friends something you see on Twitter just by clicking a couple of buttons on your iPhone.
You have a photo in your phone. Speaking of the sort of friends and family, you click the share icon and it gives you a dozen different options. And I almost never pick Facebook. My family uses an Apple photo account, and that's family. I don't put pictures of my kids on the public web at all anymore. Never did. I put them in a private Apple account. Apologies again to sink into anecdotal evidence, but I did want to get to quality because I think this is an interesting subject.
Yeah.
I said at the outset that the FTC, if it's going to pip out a victory here, I think it'll need to prevail on pretty novel arguments, and I think this is one of the main ones. Um, I believe it is correct that no federal court has ever found against a defendant on diminishment of quality alone. There's no case in which they say you were a monopolist and you abused your monopoly by, in effect, being lazy on quality. But I have to say, with apologies to the people I know who work at Meta, I feel a diminishment in quality with my experience in Facebook. I, as someone who did use it for the friends and family sharing, and that makes me a unique consumer, and other consumers may have other wants that are being served, and there are other counter arguments I probably will get into. But yeah, you know what? It's fair to say that when I go on Facebook for my personal purposes, relative to my experience in 2008, I don't want the reels. I can get those elsewhere. I don't, the ads tend to be irrelevant to me. The less I go on it, the less relevant the ads are. There's all these weird AI ads. I don't find the product terribly useful anymore.
Yeah, but
so
what about the sharing aspect though? Has that degraded? Just because what you're suggesting is it's kind of hard to parse this properly, because what I heard you just saying is the consuming entertainment functionality of Facebook isn't as good as it used to be. But remember, the FTC is essentially saying that relative to these other things doesn't matter because the other things aren't in the market. But you're not saying that if you did want to share something, or if you did find something in that morass of content that you wanted to share with your friends and family, that you would have, that would be harder to do than it once was.
I think I am. Let me play devil's advocate and put this to you, because I think these things are pretty intertwined, and the FTC is in effect trying to design the market in a way that it shouldn't. It's telling Facebook that it needs to be this friends and family thing instead of what it's pivoting to. Yeah. It's clearly pivoting to something else. And if that doesn't make me happy as a consumer, but it makes other consumers happy, all of this is irrelevant. But having said that, let me make what I think is the single strongest argument that the FTC has in its entire arsenal. Here it is. No, it is harder for me to share with friends and family. I go on the news feed, so little of it is friends and family content. So much more of it is like, look at this picture from San Francisco in 1920. Look at this TikTok video that is just, now it's a reel. Look at this. I don't even know how the AI ads make money, but okay, there's that. So I'm going to go on Facebook less. I find it less useful. I wouldn't be surprised if my other friends and family people who used it for friends and family purposes are having the same experience. They go on less. Vicious spiral commences. The less my friends and family are going on for friends and family content, the less oomph I get out of friends and family sharing, the less engagement and interaction my own material gets, because when it gets posted, it's surrounded by like a fake cabin in the woods that boomers are saying that looks so pretty, and weird niche historic San Francisco photos. I get a lot of those. They're nice, but it's not friends and family content. So the product quality is diminished. Okay, Jeff, why doesn't the FTC get some mileage out of this?
Okay. I have two responses to that. One is, I think it's actually quite interesting that there's no discussion, again, that I can remember in the briefs, of Facebook groups. And I think one of the things that's interesting is, as Facebook has evolved the way you're suggesting, its version of the cozy web has actually probably become more, I'm guessing, I don't actually have data on this, but I'm guessing that that's become a more functional and commonly used way of, sort of ensuring that you are in a group with your family and friends, and that diminishes some of the extraneous stuff that you're describing. Do you agree with that? That it's not quite the same thing as, sharing on your feed to an unadulterated set of your family and friends, but it is pretty analogous. And I think it is still, at least among, Gen Z soccer moms and dads, or Gen X soccer moms and dads, a kind of commonly used feature. But it actually strikes me as an interesting evolution of Facebook's product, in a way that the FTC, and I understand why they don't mention it, because of course it's easily replicable in a myriad other places, right? You're really just talking about sharing with a relatively small group, like your soccer team or something. And of course, you can do that through iMessage or any number of other places. So I understand why the FTC isn't mentioning it, but I do think that it actually suggests that this idea that the quality has diminished even for the family and friend sharers is not nearly so clear, because along the way, Facebook has helped to develop this Facebook groups thing, which is at least a partial substitute for that, and maybe even a better one than the kind of traditional sharing with family and friends through the unadulterated feed. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's certainly possible. And I need to repeat over and over again that my personal experience is not the market. So maybe there are a bunch of people who are getting mileage out of that. It's curious that Facebook would somewhat cannibalize its business and shift what it was dominant at to a whole other thing that it actually is in fierce competition with, Signal. Everything you just described, I'm on Signal a lot these days, doing that with those groups. I'm on the public web less altogether.
I don't think
So
it was so
while
much
it's
intentional on Facebook's part. I mean, I think Facebook certainly
mhm.
developed it as a product that it thought people would like, but I think people have their preferences have adapted to using it more than perhaps they did before, and maybe because the sharing function of the unadulterated feed is less useful to them. But that doesn't mean Facebook isn't offering something that's actually potentially more useful at the same time.
Yeah, it's possible. It's not what strikes me as the key flaw
No, no, I
here
know. I want
personally.
that's my second point. The second point I think is
My
the
yeah, go ahead.
so just quickly I'll mention that it seems to me that the other thing, and it's actually kind of related to that point, is that that measuring quality along these dimensions is extraordinarily difficult. That it may be that quality has degraded for you because of how you intended to use Facebook, or relative to how you wanted to use it or thought it was succeeding before. But your diminishment of quality may be my increase in quality. And in fact, not to get too anecdotal, but I have found that the ads served up on Facebook and Instagram are fantastic for me. I do most of my shopping now through Facebook and Instagram ads. Somehow they've figured me out and they know exactly what I like. And I actually love seeing the ads. And by the way, that goes to one of the other aspects of quality that the FTC alleges, is that there's some diminishment of privacy. I think that's clearly not true as a factual matter, but to the extent that less privacy leads to better targeted ads, that's great for me, even if that is seen as a diminishment of quality for someone who cares much more about privacy than the quality of targeted ads. So the problem then becomes, whereas, if price goes up or down, right, it moves the same direction for everyone. For everyone, a higher price is worse than a lower price. That's not true when it comes to the attributes of quality that the FTC points to, primarily ad load and privacy. So they have a real problem that maybe for the government attorney sitting in his cubicle at the FTC, he thinks that seeing more ads is a problem for him, but they have to establish that it actually is a diminishment of quality for. I don't know how you do this. I mean, it can't be that you have to show it for everyone, I suppose, but it has to be some sort of critical mass of people. Otherwise, you're just all you're doing is describing a different characteristic,
A
different quality,
different product
not a better
competing
or
for a
worse.
different market. This goes to what I was saying at the outset and is a theme across several of our antitrust conversations, that enforcers are always trying to create competition in the last market.
Yeah.
So this segues well into our final main topic of exclusionary, abuse of monopoly, because defining monopoly power is showing, do you have the ability to diminish quality? And then abuse of monopoly is more like, did you do so? And everything the FTC brings up here, and this is my answer to my own devil's advocate position. I don't trust government regulators basically designing the market, saying we know what the market should look like better than the market does. It's the point I made to you on a previous episode of, I don't ask the government to pick stocks for me, and I never would. I don't think I'd make a profit. I don't think I would beat the stock market. So they say, well, the ad load has gone up. And so, first of all, compared to what? Second of all, it seems to work for you. I was talking to someone who was saying, why does Facebook keep making so much money? And part of it is they're just really good at targeted ads. Apparently not for me, probably because I use the product much less. I don't know. But their ads are actually not a problem for most people, it would appear. Data privacy, compared to what? What is the market that the FTC would rather have? Would they rather have us paying for social media subscription fees? An argument based on underinvestment in friends and family features. I mean, that's the FTC really trying to design the market. No, Facebook, Instagram, you shall not be an app that has algorithmically based recommended videos. You shall be the friends and family product that you were in 2008. We, the FTC, decree. There's a reason that pure quality-based arguments have no precedent, I think, anywhere, let alone online, because all of these arguments ultimately come down to the FTC saying, you know what, we could have done it better, which is hindsight BS.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I think that it dovetails with a lot of the points we've been discussing, right? It dovetails with the problems of market definition. It dovetails with the problems of how you measure quality and value in these markets. I think in all of these cases, there is this kind of imagined world of what Facebook perhaps once was, and that the FTC implicitly says it should always continue to be. And it's a real problem, because what you actually find in these kinds of markets is all kinds of unanticipated evolution of both technology and consumer preferences in such a way that determining that baseline is kind of insane. Even if you did say point to Facebook in 2002 or 2005 as the sort of ideal of Facebook, that would be kind of crazy to hold that up as the baseline for what it should look like today in a completely different competitive market. Right?
Let's make them bring back the poke button.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I want to underline this point of it's not easy. This whole thing of we could have done it better. So they want to duck the notion that they have to show consumer harm, which is kind of annoying, because it's just this frontal assault on the consumer welfare standard. Let's just put a pin in that one. They claim what they're left actually having to claim, if they actually have to show consumer harm, which I would say they do, is that not only would Instagram have succeeded to the degree it did, it would be even better had it acted on its own. Whether that be, and they, because Google purchased it. I love this thing where the FTC is like trying to play the different companies that they attack in different lawsuits off each other. I guess it's the DOJ, but you get my point. It's not easy. It's not easy. You cannot pick the companies that succeed and then say, oh, it would have been better. Amazon purchased Twitch for $1 billion. I think basically the same that Facebook purchased Instagram for. And they have regrets. It's not gone well. We're not all talking about Twitch. When Google started its own social media platform, Google Plus, Facebook freaked out. Where is Google Plus? Yeah. Who is on Google Plus today? So it's really frustrating to me that they approve or bless the acquisitions. I don't even think we've brought that up yet. Yeah. And then, a decade later, or almost a decade later, they are then attacking them precisely because they succeeded. They succeeded because the company did good work. They invested well. They made smart decisions. It wasn't inevitable. It wasn't automatic. And it's really disingenuous for the government to act like it was.
Yeah, the government's very dismissive of the reality that Instagram, when Facebook purchased it, had no revenue, had no may or may not have had plans to monetize itself by advertising, but certainly had no capacity to do it at the time, and had something like, I wish I can remember now, 16 employees or something like that. I mean, not the kind of entity that is absolutely destined without any doubt to become a Facebook competitor. And I think, here's something that we haven't mentioned that I'll mention quickly here is that the government has the burden of proof in this kind of a case, right? I mean, they're the plaintiff. They have to demonstrate that, but for this acquisition, competition, and as you say, really, consumer welfare would have to be higher in the absence of this purchase. Now, admittedly, there are legal limitations on exactly what they have to show, because of course it's impossible to show what the world would have looked like if Facebook hadn't bought Instagram. But the burden is still on them. I mean, they do have to be able to have a plausible story of how Instagram, or especially WhatsApp, could have become the next Facebook. And while of course they have a story that that explains what that trajectory might have looked like, they have no basis on which to actually suggest that it would have happened, and that Instagram would have been what it is today, absent both the technology that all three of the technology, the money, and the management acumen that Facebook brought to it. And this happens all the time with these antitrust cases. The government assumes that managerial acumen is completely fungible, that any set of managers can succeed where any other set of managers did. It only requires certain superficial attributes, that you have a network, for example, as if the size of a network is determinative of the outcome. Well, Google Plus shows you that that's absolutely not the case, right? They're constantly dismissive of the idea that management actually has some role in determining the outcome and the success of a company. They just dismiss that as a possibility. And actually, I think that's probably the most likely explanation for why Instagram became so successful, because for all the criticism that they get, Facebook's management skills are pretty exceptional, and especially when it comes to developing new products and incorporating them and their special attributes into their product. So that's one part of it, is this sort of burden of proof point. The other thing that I think we have to mention is, and you've alluded to this already, is for the FCC to show that competition was lessened because of this acquisition, they either have to make the argument they do make, which is utterly insane, which is essentially the argument is a merger is per se illegal. A merger, at least of a nascent competitor, is per se illegal under the Sherman Act. We can
And
come
just
back
to
to
kind
that
of, this is the other key novelty where they are trying to break new ground.
Utterly insane.
Go ahead.
I mean, this is, to me, this is the most insane part of the FTC's case. They are essentially arguing that well, what I just said, that a merger of a potential competitor is per se illegal under the Sherman Act. It is per se
under Section 2,
because
to be
under
clear.
Section 2, yes, right, good point. Section 2 of the Sherman Act, because it's inherently exclusionary, inherently reduces competition because you've taken this potential competitor and removed it from the market. Now, there are so many insane problems with that it's almost, I don't know, it's almost laughable to me. It would imply that, and consistent with other positions the current FTC and DOJ have taken, it would imply that any company that grows through acquisition rather than internal development is engaging in anti-competitive conduct. All mergers are essentially illegal under this approach. It's absolutely untenable. I cannot imagine that the court will accept that argument. The alternative argument has to be that the purchase of Instagram and WhatsApp reduced competition in the market. Now, so the argument the FTC wants to make is the reduction of specific competitors is sufficient to establish a Section 2 violation. I would say that's insane. But it could be that you could demonstrate that the reduction of competition writ large is sufficient to make out a Section 2 violation. But to do that, you can't just say that Facebook bought these competitors and took them out of the market. You'd have to somehow make the argument that having purchased these competitors, no one else could compete. That it either demonstrated that Facebook would kill every other potential competitor. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how you'd make the argument, but you'd have to show that it demonstrates a so the removal of a potential competitor is not the same as the removal of potential competition. And I think that FTC
I have to come in.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a friend. They have a dog. They adopted the dog.
Yeah.
The dog comes from a Christian missionary group. They go to China and they go to markets where dogs are sold to be eaten, and they buy the dogs and then they send them to America.
Yeah.
And I said to my friend, okay, I'm glad for this dog. This dog that's your dog. It's true that you saved this dog. But do you see the problem here? Have you ever the supply and demand chart? You're just funding the market for dog eating. They're just gonna get encouraged to get more dogs to make more money. Of course, where I'm going here is, why is the inference not, hey, well, now I'll start another competitor and I'll get bought up?
Arguably, by the way, exactly what Instagram expected, as many founders do. I mean, again, there's this make-believe world in which Instagram was going to become the next Facebook, and I'm sure that its founders would have loved for that to happen. But it seems pretty clear from the evidence that they expected the most likely outcome was that they'd be bought by someone.
If you enter the market and make
exactly that.
Facebook will buy you. Oh, the horror! Everybody was scared
away. Who would enter the market in that world? Everyone, I guess, is the answer. I mean, so it's a little bit, it strikes me as that's at least a plausible argument, but the FTC hasn't done anything to demonstrate that it's actually true. And in fact, if anything, has demonstrated the opposite is true. By virtue of Facebook acquiring these companies, lots of other companies were able to get funding from VC firms because they understood that a much lower degree of success could still potentially lead to a return on their investment because they might get purchased by someone. The other thing I think it demonstrates is a point we've mentioned before, which is, in particular, the argument the FTC makes that one of the reasons that Facebook bought Instagram was to keep Google from having it. I mean, right there, they're essentially saying Facebook sees competition coming from Google, and it thinks it's important to ensure that it can have a product that is competitive with whatever Google might develop. That's massive competition in this market. Google was, of course, entirely excluded from the relevant market by the FTC. But what it seems to me to really show is, again, that the loss of competition from Instagram does not equate to the loss of competition in this market. If anything, it demonstrates that Facebook perceived competition coming from a lot of different sources, and that it needed something like Instagram and WhatsApp to maintain its competitiveness. And as we discussed, not to maintain its competitiveness just by keeping others from having this whatever special quality attributes the Instagram and WhatsApp had, but by incorporating them into their product and providing that value to its consumers, to its users. This is all evidence of large amounts of competition, large amounts of entry, and large amounts of increased consumer quality, consumer benefits. Not with the FTC.
In case it hasn't been clear to any of our listeners at this point, Jeff and I are skeptical of this lawsuit.
That's fair.
Jeff, we've done well timing wise. We're in great shape here. So for purposes of the podcast, I will say this has been the Tech Policy Podcast. I am your host, Corbin Barthold. I've been joined by Jeff Manne. I'm so excited to get him on for more of these antitrust discussions. It's been great. And for the podcast, we are going to sign off there. If you listen and love it, subscribe, recommend, send it to your friends. And we'll see you all next time. For the WLF event, Glenn, I'm going to hand it over to you. I don't know how you want to close us out here, but please re-enter the conversation.
Well, thank you. I can't possibly say anything more interesting or insightful than either of you did. So I will thank you for your participation in this. Thank you for making WLF a part of the Tech Policy Podcast, something that I listen to on a very regular basis and highly recommend to others that they listen to. And as our late chairman of our advisory board, Dick Thornburg, used to say at the end of our briefings, stay tuned. There's still a lot more to talk about in this area, and we may be back here again in another 6 months to a year. But thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks, Glenn, for having me. Thanks, Corbin, for a great discussion.
Thank you guys so much.